since it's another day. Billions will kneel and pray. Anything to aid escape from the world so cold and gray.
Welcome back to the Bones and Tubbs Show. It's just the Bones Show again. Tubbs is currently westbound and down, heading back from North Carolina to Ohio. He should be back later tonight. And I figured I'd just do another in-between-isode, keep you guys abreast of the situation going on, whatever that might be. I've got 2 news stories I wanted to share, see what you guys think about it. You can comment on it and we will have us a discussion. But here's a video to get us started.
Since the start of the Trump presidency, we've seen the obvious backlash from upset liberals and disappointed Democrats who were really hoping to see the first woman president in office. And you would think a year and a half into the presidency, Democrats and liberals would finally just accept that President Trump was in office and let his presidency run out. However, if you've ever met a liberal, or if you've even witnessed one of their protests, you would see that shame isn't a word common to their vocabulary, and these protests, outbursts, and tantrums that we've seen from them have been a very real source of entertainment and mockery for many of us over the past year. However, things are starting to take a dark turn as the call for violence against the Conservative Party is becoming a very real threat here in America today, with people even talking about us heading into a civil war. Let's start off with the most recent call to violence from good old Maxine Waters.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And this call for Trump, his administration, and his supporters not to be welcomed anywhere is one that has been widely exercised by angry liberals all over America. Let's start off with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was kicked out of the Red Hen, a restaurant in Virginia, this past week solely because she worked for the president. The owner said that she didn't want the woman who was associated with the inhumane and unethical acts here in America to be eating in her restaurant. And Sanders politely and quietly left. However, the owner didn't stop there. She followed her family to a restaurant across the street and continued to berate and humiliate her family from the sidewalk. Let's also take a look at DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. She was booed and harassed until she left a Mexican restaurant where she was trying to eat dinner, and protesters have been standing outside of her house chanting about how she's a child snatcher and playing audio of crying immigrant children. Probably the audio of the same crying immigrant children that the mainstream media has been using to push the agenda that Trump is separating families and he's a Nazi. We even have articles comparing how many times the mainstream media has compared immigration policy to the Holocaust. We have it here. Children are being marched away in showers. Donald Trump looks like Hitler. These are CNN political commentators and MSNBC reporters who are talking to the public every single day. They're equating Trump to Nazism. They're equating the supporters to evil. We've seen these mainstream media hosts cry about these pictures of immigrant children in cages wrapped in foil blankets, these same pictures from the Obama administration. And even further, we've seen Time magazine use the picture of a little girl in a pink hoodie crying as the face of separation of families at the border when she was never even really separated by her family to begin with. We've really seen the mainstream media exploit these children and really use them to tug at the heartstrings of the average American. And there's been a lot of controversial response. We have Peter Fonda, who called for President Trump's son, Barron, to be ripped away from his mother, kidnapped, and put into a cage with pedophiles. We have ex-CIA Director Michael Hayden, who equated Trump's zero-tolerance policy to what happened during the Holocaust. He reposted a picture of concentration camps, stating that other administrations ripped their children away from their mothers. We've seen a lot of hate from the party that preaches tolerance and love, from the mainstream media who's been reporting on Trump and his supporters being Nazis, to the liberal violence against conservatives that's growing bigger and bigger every single day. I think it is safe to say that we are in an all-out civil war. This has been Savannah Hernandez with Infowars.com.
So there's that. And then with that, I have a news article from WashingtonExaminer.com titled, Poll 59% fear violence from Trump haters and 31% predict civil war. It's talking about The division in the United States that has escalated into the organized harassment of presidential aides has 6 in 10 worried about the violence from the anti-Trump advocates, and nearly a third fearing it will end in civil war. The latest survey from Rasmussen reports found that 59% of all voters are concerned that those opposed to President Trump's policies will resort to violence. And added Rasmussen, 31% believe it is likely that the United States will experience a second civil war sometime in the next 5 years. The new polling evidence of fear in the country over political division follows the harassment from the 3 top Trump aides, including spokeswoman Sarah Sanders, ordered out of a Virginia restaurant, and a senior advisor, Stephen Miller, whose condo drew protests from liberals. It also follows a call by liberal California Representative Maxine Waters to bring pressure to the Trump officials when in public, and urgings from legal experts for Trump aides to apply for concealed carry permits and to buy guns. In its analysis of the new survey, Rasmussen highlighted who is most concerned about the violence. Most voters across the partisan spectrum are concerned about political violence from those opposed to Trump's policies. Although Republicans are most likely to be very concerned, the level of concern is about the same among Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated voters when it comes to the threat of violence from those critical of the media's coverage of Trump. Women and those under 40 are more worried about a possible civil war than men and older voters are. 44% of blacks think that a second civil war is likely within the next 5 years, a view shared by 28% of whites and 36% of other minority voters. Whites are also less concerned about political violence than others are. Now, we've seen stories like these pop up from time to time about the coming civil war, the race war, whatever it might be, and I just think it's kind of silly. I mean, I'm sure it'll happen eventually. That's why I use they in air quotes, but why they, or the hidden hand, have been pushing everybody into these different subcategories, trying to divide and conquer, getting us all upset at each other, and trying to get us to fight amongst ourselves instead of ripping their fucking heads off and ending the tax machine. I mean, really, the only thing that could happen, I mean, we've seen protests with Antifa and all that, and a couple stabbings here and there, but most likely, what are they going to do? Are they going to take to the streets and assault us with double-wielded dildos? They're going to attack us with sticks. I mean, they're anti-gun. What are they going to do? They're going to ban the guns and then go take to the streets, fight and win a civil war? I don't fucking think so. I think it's most important that everybody realize that this divide and conquer strategy is, being spearheaded in the mainstream media on either side to try and force you to fight your neighbor. While your neighbor might be a douchebag, he's not your enemy. The enemies are the ones that are setting the policies, having us poison our children with these umpteen vaccines with whatever the fuck is inside them. The same people that are changing educational policy to dumb down the schools, push from the federal level, the tax machine, the Federal Reserve. I mean, the people that are robbing us of our wealth. I mean, anybody with any amount of life can tell you that a $20 bill bought a lot more in the 70s and 80s than it buys now. That should be proof positive of the fact that they're sucking the wealth from your wallet, from your future, from your children's future. But anyway, just a side note. Your neighbor's not your enemy. Look upward. Now, the second story I had that I wanted to mention and talk about comes after this Hawaii volcano eruption. There was very little, if any, warning of this eruption that's continuing to go on. They don't know when it'll stop. They have no way to stop it. But that pales in comparison to the massive supervolcano that is under Yellowstone. If you've not heard of this, Yellowstone Supervolcano is a massive multi-state caldera. Pulled up a story here from express.co.uk titled Yellowstone-style eruption could easily be sparked by magma chamber rising to the surface beneath U.S. A huge magma source has been found growing under the United States, which could one day shatter the surface in a huge explosion, with a geophysicist warning that the eruption could be a distant relative of Yellowstone. Now, this is talking about a supervolcano that they've just discovered, or they thought was completely dormant, and it is on the East Coast in the New England area. Slowly rising magma is situated beneath Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and came as something as a surprise to scientists working on the study. Rutgers University geophysicist Professor Vadim Levin said the upwelling we detected is like a hot air balloon, and we infer that something is rising up to the deeper part of our planet under New England. Our study challenges the established notion of how the continents on which we live behave. It challenges the textbook concepts taught in introductory geology classes. There are no active volcanoes in the region where magma is brewing, but researchers state that it is still rising, and in a distant future it could erupt. The study goes on to warn that the eruption could be as powerful as the United States' most feared supervolcano, which is under Yellowstone, we just talked about. Professor Levin continued, it will likely take millions of years for the upwelling to get where it's going. The next step is to try and understand how this is happening. It's not Yellowstone, but it's a distant relative. Maybe it didn't have time yet, or maybe it's too small and will never make it. Come back in 50 million years and we'll see what happens. As the discovery is new, experts are unsure what will happen if the magma boils over to the surface. However, if they are correct in their predictions and it is similar to a Yellowstone eruption, the consequences could be dire. And this is the transition into the Yellowstone Supervolcano, but if Yellowstone erupted, estimates put it anywhere between 80 and 100,000 people would be killed instantly, and 2/3 of the United States would immediately be made uninhabitable. Now, living here in the mighty Midwest state of Ohio, we are right outside of the secondary ash zone. Get a chance, Google image search Yellowstone Supervolcano eruption map. It'll show you the 5 statewide instant kill from the massive explosion, and the secondary ash zone goes out, I think it's a 500-mile radius outside of that to about 1,000, which puts it just on the tip of Ohio, if not halfway in Indiana. So while I won't be killed immediately, or slowly killed by inhaling volcanic ash, definitely will be affected by a massive migration of people trying to escape the ash zone, as well as the rest of the United States and most, if not all, of the world. Everyone will be affected by the change in climate because the ash will be pushed so far into the upper atmosphere that it will drop global temperatures. Some speculate between 10 and 20 degrees. I mean, that's pretty fucking huge. It'll affect growing seasons for years to come. Food will be harder to come by. Water will be tainted. Wildlife in a lot of areas will be completely fucksville. A large spew of ash into the atmosphere could block out sunlight and directly affect life beneath it, creating a nuclear winter. The massive eruption could be a staggering 6,000 times as powerful as the one from Washington's Mount St. Helens in 1980, which killed 57 people and deposited ash in 11 different states and 5 Canadian provinces. If the volcano explodes, a climate shift would ensue, as the volcano would spew massive amounts of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, which can form a sulfur aerosol that reflects and absorbs sunlight. I highly recommend anybody go to YouTube, find a channel by a lady named Mary Greeley. Mary, common spelling, I believe Greeley is Greel, and then it should pop up in the search, but she makes it her obsession to give you just about daily updates on what's going on in Yellowstone. And the USGS, as she covers in some of her videos, has been covering up a lot of earthquakes that are going on in Yellowstone. Excuse me, I know I sound better this episode. I was going through it on the last one, but I still kind of sound like a raspy lesbian, but most of you are used to that. But anyway, she shows you the data of the earthquakes. You know, they've increased in number over the last, I want to say, year or 2 years. She also talks about the ground swelling and how the caldera is moving, because it's, directly, it's basically a living thing. And she can show you on the charts and the graphs pretty much in live time of the increase in the amount of lava going into the caldera. Also, the geysers that go off, spraying the hot springs, the water, that is a pressure, somewhat of a small pressure release from the fresh groundwater. When it comes close into contact with the lava, it boils and, shoots off that way. Well, one of the old ones, the Steamboat geyser that had been inactive for a number of years, has gone off, I think, 10 or 11 times in the last couple of weeks. But there's no problem. No problem. I'm sure that they would let us know ahead of time, even though they're unable to tell us about Hawaii. They're completely inept. So, if you live in those areas or you're concerned about it, I would definitely consider probably getting out of there. Because, it's just a matter of time. And I read a story, Scientific Observer, where it was saying, it only happens, the Yellowstone eruptions only happen about every 600,000 years, and it's only been 640,000, so we're only overdue by about 40,000 years. No problem. Nothing to worry about. Third and final story we have here is an article from News Wars titled, Child Abuse Charity Head Arrested for Attempted Child Rape. Also arrested on child pornography charges. The head of a charity that campaigns against sexual violence has been arrested in New York for child pornography, and he allegedly tried to meet with children as young as 2 for sex. Joel Davis, 22, is accused of trying to set up sexual encounters between himself and young children, as well as soliciting an undercover FBI agent to send sexually explicit videos of minors. The New Yorker was arrested on Tuesday on child sex abuse and child pornography charges. Davis is the chairman of the International Campaign to Stop Rape and Gender Violence and Conflict, an organization devoted to ending sexual violence. Now, we've talked about this before on previous shows, but these specific groups in these areas are, pretty much fucking magnets for these goddamn child molesters. So it doesn't surprise me at all. And while I hope that they would, hang him in public, if convicted, while I wish that would happen, I'm sure he'll just get a slap on the wrist. Because, it's apparently not that big of a deal to fuck kids. According to law, even though we all find it egregious and it's one of the worst crimes that can be committed against another human being. I recently started going down this rabbit hole. I can't remember if we mentioned it on the last show that Tubbs and I did together or not, but something called the Ninth Circle Child Sex Cult. And it has to do with Jeffrey Epstein, the infamous creator of one company or another that ended up just being a Ponzi scheme. The premise basically is that the Ninth Circle is just a compendium of people in this upper echelon, this group, and they just do the most evil, vile shit to children, and they're so powerful and so connected that they don't suffer any consequences for anything. Now, this guy was caught in a Ponzi scheme, as I just mentioned. His partner got convicted and did 25 years, I think, federal time for the largest Ponzi scheme ever in the history of the United States. While Jeffrey Epstein he didn't even get a slap on the wrist. He was just free to go. He takes his money from his ill-gotten gains and, he purchases Epstein Island, which was the largest private land buy, once again, in United States history. And then he buys a 727 plane that he flies to and from his island with A-list celebrities, English royalty, politicians, and the like, and they call it the Lolita Express. Later on, he was charged with over 100 counts of something to do with raping children or grooming them for sex, and it came out that he was using this island and this plane as basically like a child prostitution service. So as you would expect, with those kind of charges, those fucking disgusting crimes, you'd think he would do a lot of time, maybe never see daylight again, perhaps get one of those delicious lethal injections, but that didn't fucking happen. He got a plea deal to where no one else would be prosecuted if anything came out about them involved with Lolita Express or his island. He got an 18-month sentence, got his own wing in the jail. He was around no other inmates. He spent something like 3 to 4 days a week spending the night in jail, but had day passes to leave, and he was still allowed to fly on his plane and do whatever else fuck was going on. And that's fucking unheard of. That's fucking crazy. And if that doesn't show you, along with the fact that he was convicted of the Ponzi scheme, this is the second time he's done something fucking egregious, and he did no time whatsoever. So, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I like to think that the rumor mill is true. Trump has had a lot of arrests under his Justice Department for people involved in child trafficking or human trafficking, and pedophiles have been getting locked up in mass numbers, which is great. I like to think that he's hip to this, and he's trying to stamp it out, but we shall see. History will tell us, the truth of that matter. So we'll just wait and see, I guess. But it's a shame that these things happen. I wish we could get back to a time where these people didn't even make it to court. I'll leave you with that. Let me see. Well, we are approaching the 20-minute mark for this recording, which means by the time I get done editing it, it'll probably be about 3 minutes of useful audio. So hopefully it's 3 minutes that you enjoy. And we will be back next week with, Bones and Tubbs. It'll be amazing. I'm just not used to this single-person platform. It's so ronery. Just kind of letting you guys know what I've been up to, going through these various news stories and rabbit holes, getting myself upset for the week to come, just constantly building my rage. I'm not really sure what our next topic will be. I know Tubbs and I talked about it a little bit. I'm going to try to see if we can do an episode on the document of questionable origin. Some say it was leaked to a William Cooper, and then other stories I've seen was someone bought a commercial grade printer of some kind back in the 80s. I think it was 84, 85. And he bought it from some government office. And inside of this printer he found this document, and it was titled Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And that is one of the craziest documents I've read. At the time, this being dated in the 80s, a lot of this was like, nah, that'll never fucking happen. But now you read it now in 2018, and it's It's like a day-to-day operating manual, and you kind of see where it's heading. So I think there's definitely an episode there. If anybody wants to check it out, just Google Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars PDF. You can pull it up and check it out for yourself. And we will, if not next week, eventually soon we will break that down and toss it back and forth for your enjoyment. Hopefully Tubbs was able to get through some of the book that I bought him on his vacation. It's a little heavy for your average bear for, light vacation reading, but that's just how Bones and Tubbs roll. We like to increase our knowledge, increase our suffering, increase the speed at which we free fall into that rabbit hole and bring to you, whatever fruits we might find in there, little treasures floating around. So that's really all I've got for you guys this week. I'm going to get this edited and throw it up on the podcast page of the website and send it out to your beautiful, sexy ears, which I'll soon be invading. If this is the first time listening to the Bones and Tubbs show, welcome. If it's not, thank you for coming back. So I just spent probably a good 5 to 10 minutes talking to myself because somehow this fucking recorder stopped. But anyway, we will go back over it as best I can remember. Check out our Instagram, instagram.com/Bones and Tubbs. Check out our Facebook, facebook.com/Bones and Tubbs. If Twitter's your thing, we're kind of starting to fuck around on there a little bit more. It's Twitter @BonesTubbs. Go to iTunes also and search Bones and Tubbs. Leave us a review, please. There's been an increasing amount of awesome reviews on there. But if you leave a review and you screenshot it and send me your mailing address to bonesandtubbs@gmail.com, I'll send you some bumper stickers. Bones and Tubbs bumper stickers. Also check out our YouTube channel. And we need 10 more subscribers and we get our custom name. So that'll be fucking banging. If you go to youtube.com and search Bones and Tubbs and you subscribe, send me a screenshot to bonesandtubbs@gmail.com. I will also send you bumper stickers for that action. If you like the Bones and Tubbs show, if you like what you're hearing, if you find us entertaining, go over to www.patreon.com/Bones and Tubbs and let us know what some of that money's. Give us $1, $5, whatever you want to do. And there's a rewards tiers on that for each of those actions. We got some Bones and Tubbs Raw episodes that we've been recording for a while. I've got enough to put together quite a few of those. And once we get all those up, there will be a regular Bones and Tubbs Raw, I'd say probably every week. And that'll be for our Patreon-only subscribers. I think you can get in on that for $1 a month. So, just a little bit of $1, and you get a whole extra Bones and Tubbs show. We got a bunch of new topics coming down the pipe. So be sure to come back. We love you.
Thank you.